There's a drive. Lawrie on the run. Takes one away from Morales. On his face, Brett Lawrie can make plays anywhere on the field. There he goes. Bounce toward third. Lawrie gets a big hop, barehands it, throws. What a play!
Here's the lead. If he comes down before he throws it, it's too late.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime, taking you back. We are going back to Brett Lawrie Mania in Toronto. If you weren't there at the beginning of the decade for the 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 Blue Jays, you do not understand that the fact that the Blue Jays won the AL East in 2015 and Brett Lawrie wasn't a part of it seems impossible.
I was kind of thinking about it after we finished up the last episode of this. How, as much as the 2015 Blue Jays felt sort of like sort of a dawning of a new era, despite half the team being there for a while. Brett Lawrie really is sort of the optimism of the early 2010s about the Blue Jays lived and died with Brett Laurie's Blue Jay career.
Yes.
And as soon as he was gone, the new heights came in, which were immediately dashed 2 years later.
But he was the one who had to be Brett Lawrie. I guess that's sort of the part that we get to when we get to here is like we've said probably a dozen times each that if you weren't there, you don't understand. But like because of the way he came in, because of 2011, the fact that he was the one that got traded for Josh Donaldson it's so poetic and so perfect for it to be like, when he showed up, you're immediately like, Brett Lawrie is going to be the reason we make the playoffs.
Not only is it poetic and perfect that he's the one who got traded for Josh Donaldson, but the fact he got traded for Josh Donaldson, and then Josh Donaldson immediately was literally the MVP of the American League.
Right.
Is like if he just even if Donaldson was just like fine, it wouldn't have the same like poetry to it. But the fact that Josh Donaldson was quite literally the best player in the league the first year after he got traded for Brett Lawrie is like, it's perfect. It's a perfect arc for everyone but Brett Lawrie.
It ends up being true, right? It ends up being true that he is the reason the Jays make the playoffs. It's just not
right
for his on-field contributions.
That's very true. Yeah. And like, I remember when he got traded for Donaldson, and we kind of touched on this in the first episode, but only very briefly. But now that we're here, the fact that there was a not small contingent of Blue Jays fans that when the trade happened were like, I don't know. Like the Josh Donaldson trade was not immediately popular.
Certainly
which is
not.
Wild. But that was the power of Brett Lawrie.
Fans had invested a lot in him.
Yeah, and he was also like bad by then, which is crazy. But
well, yes and no, right? He had been revealed to be average.
Yeah, I guess average is better than bad.
Is sort of what happens, right? He has that breakout where he's a 2.5 win player with plus defense and supreme offense in his little stint at 23 at 21. And then he's basically like a league average guy in 2012, 2013, and 2014, but the issue is he can't stay on the field. That becomes, It was like, you could see the upside and he was always a good defensive player, but he obviously gets, it doesn't quite, the hitting isn't superstar level, but he's a good defender and you're looking at it and you're saying, he can't stay on the field. And it was the talking point at the time. And who knows if this ends up being litigated in the future or not, but like it was the play style everybody pointed to and said, you can't keep up playing at 120 miles an hour and running around. We talked about, crashing into the well at Yankee Stadium and stuff.
Ball is popped up along the warning track. Brett Lawrie dives in and falls into the camera well, and he's hurt. Oh my. He got over to that wall. Pat Hudson is there. Now John Farrell. Lawrie catapulted right over the top of that padded railing.
Yeah, and like in his 3 quote unquote full seasons with the Blue Jays. He plays 125 games in 2012, 107 games in 2013, and only 70 games in 2014. So it was sort of like that downward trajectory of staying healthy. The Yankee Stadium, the well, I feel like that was in 2014, wasn't it?
It was on the way out. It was sort of like the last. I remember it being like an exasperation.
No, it was it 2012, really? Wow, it was 2012.
That was the first injury then?
That was
because he has a similar like injury later.
Bruised his right calf flipping over a railing, trying to catch a foul ball in 2012. It's in July of 2012. And then hard to see. 2012.
Crazy.
That seems way later to me.
Well, that was the first time it sort of got him in trouble. I remember it ended up being reoccurring. I'll tell you what, Jake, it wasn't just injuries. He also, I mean, we forget so quickly. He got suspended for hitting an umpire with his helmet.
And he'll take the walk. Comes with one. Wow. Bill Miller with a delayed call. Looked like he was off the plate. Lawrie was headed to first.
Yeah, it fooled all of us. Watch where this ball ends up. It looked like a fastball away. Set down to first base, and it's going to be called back. This one will really show if it got any of the plate. Nope.
And now he calls him out. And Lawrie threw him out, and then the helmet, and that's going to cost Brett Lawrie. And now they've got to get Lawrie and get him back in the dugout.
Change up. It looked high and possibly outside. Brett Lawrie can't believe it. Then he gets thrown out. That's the one that might cost him right there. Throwing the helmet and bouncing it off the umpire. Watch if is it high, and it looks like it's too high.
Looked like it was high and outside. And that's going to cost Brett Lawrie. He threw his equipment. And there goes John Farrell, and he wasn't going to leave till he got tossed.
So I was waiting for this because one of my great joys as a Blue Jays fan was being at that game.
Wow, tell me everything.
It was one of those moments that I assume that it'd be similar. Actually, it's not that different to how I think about being at the Edwin wildcard game, but in a completely different way. Because obviously when you're there live, it's not like you don't have the camera angles and everything. And like from where we were sitting, it looked kind of like he whipped the thing at the ump. And like, because I remember the angle was, it looked like he whipped it at his shin.
Right.
Where in reality, he whipped it at the ground and it like bounced up and hit the ump. But from where we were, like, it was this weird thing where I think he was arguing it was a strikeout call or he was tagged out at the plate, I want to say. I can't remember exactly what spurned it, but you could see him fired up and getting right in the ump's face. And it was kind of like, okay, here goes Brett again. And then it immediately turned. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, this is actually like really insane. And it went and it was very much like the Brett Lawrie experience where it was kind of, I don't want to say horrifying because like it wasn't like upsetting or anything, but it was like darkly funny, I think is how it was just like, man, this guy is like, he just can't slow down with anything. Like whether it's his play style or just like high-fiving in the dugout or arguing calls. Like it was just, and like when he threw the helmet, you could see sort of the body language of everybody change on the field. Like you can see the ump really go like, get the fuck out of here kind of thing. And it was a very bizarre, like, cause I feel like it happened in like the 9th inning. I think it was late in the game, but it just like, and it was just very bizarre, which I think was kind of the Brett Lawrie experience. There
was the natural instinct to be like, well, he didn't mean to throw his helmet at the umpire.
Which like he didn't.
He did.
He threw it at the ground and it bounced up and hit him. But like still.
You can't hit the umpire with your equipment. Full stop. But yeah, you nailed it. Just sort of like that was him to everything.
Yeah, ninth inning after a strike 3 call.
That was him with everything. He would hit home runs, and then he would like. There's that great clip of him like rushing through the dugout and giving all the high fives, and like Edwin's just like, what is this guy is ridiculous. Just
and like to like Laurie's credit, I feel like he has like a self-awareness about it. Like even his quotes after the ump thing. It's like, it's just by his own words. He's like, it's just my passion for the game. I wanted to help my teammates out as best I could. That's the pride I have in this game. I leave my emotions on the field. Like he's just so that's right. And then the ump got hit with a drink as he was walking off the field because everyone was pissed.
That's Toronto,
about
baby.
The strike call.
That's like crazy Jays crowds. Of all the places in the city, if you're going to go to a sports game and you're mic into a fight, like the Jays is probably the top of the list.
For sure it is. If you've ever been to opening day to the Blue Jays, it's full of dummies.
Yeah, I remember going to an opening day against the Tigers, and I was sitting 500s, and I would have been 22 or 23, and I was like, "It's this." There's a guy in a Tigers jersey, and not like you're not safe, like no one's going to get killed. I was like, "Man, it is a rough atmosphere up here," because obviously it's early in the year, so it's muggy and
yeah,
not a great time.
Opening day and Canada Day are low-key the least fun Blue Jays games to go to if you're not an asshole. I'm not even sure how low-key it is, but...
Opening day especially, not low-key.
No. But like back to Brett Lawrie, it's crazy that he only has 6 seasons in the majors.
Yeah, he's out of the league by 26.
Which is like the way he... And again, I don't mean to keep repeating ourselves, but like it's hard to exaggerate how impossible that seemed in 2011.
Yeah, to not even basically get to his prime years is like, it's hard to believe. It really is when you were in that sort of that level of like, the best way I can describe it is like, imagine 5 years from now, Bo Bichette is not in the major leagues anymore. That's what we're looking at in terms of like shooting up prospect record boards, the numbers in his first stint, like that first impression at 21, you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to be a star. And it is like he was a better defender than I think Bichette is now, and he just like he had the bat as well. Man, oh man!
The thing that's wild to me with Brett is like I'm not going to make the argument that his 5 years after 2011 were like amazing. As you said, they were pretty literally league average, but like they weren't bad enough for him to be out of the league.
Well, it becomes the thing of, you know, if league average, if you believe you can just get a league average guy, then the other things do matter, right? It's like,
right.
If he was incredible, if he was 2011 Brett the whole time, then the way he played or the way he rubbed people the wrong way sometimes wouldn't matter. But if you were just a league average guy, that counts against you. And he also obviously had issues staying healthy. I think he got signed again by Milwaukee a couple of years ago.
He sat out 27 in 2018 and signed a minor league deal with the Brewers in 2019 and was released in June without playing a game.
So he went to Oakland and played almost every day that next year. And as you said, was sort of his average self. He was, you know, at 263, you know, he was never going to get on base. And it ended up being, he struck out a ton. That ended up being where the game goes anyway. But, and then Chicago, Brett Lawrie, I thought he was going to make it in Chicago. I don't know why.
I think it's because that jersey really suited him.
Yeah, the jersey and the specs.
Yeah.
He's wearing the sunglasses and the black jersey, and he looked like a vampire sort of because he wore the mouth guard. I
feel like, I guess my point I was trying to make with like, he wasn't bad enough to be out of the league is you're right in all your points. But like, there are guys who have been in the league for 15 years, 12 years that are playing right now. Some of whom may be on the Blue Jays currently that like aren't better than Brett Lawrie was in his final year.
Absolutely.
But you're right. If, you know, he rubbed people the wrong way enough, which he absolutely did, I can see it.
Incredible.
I always kind of was rooting for him to make a comeback. Especially
in Chicago. Once 2015 happened for the Blue Jays, I was 100% like, all right, I hope good things happen for Lawrie, right? Because you're like, oh my goodness, it obviously worked out amazingly for the Jays. Obviously, like it was a huge win, and anything Lawrie does won't diminish how great this season was, no matter what. That was sort of how I felt about it. I was rooting for him to make it in Chicago because he was playing second base, which coming up, like as a prospect in Milwaukee, that's where he was playing, and that's where I expected him to play all along. I always thought he was going to end up a second baseman, but he didn't really do it until Chicago, and then he only played 94 games and was never heard from him again.
Yeah, and like it's funny how locked in my brain he is as a second baseman, even though that's not where he played for the Blue Jays, which is weird.
Yeah, well, coming up, that's what I expected him to be was a second baseman.
It is truly in every sense of everything. Whether you want to talk about his 2011, whether you want to talk about his injuries and how he got hurt, or you want to talk about him fighting the umpires, or you want to talk about his sort of not great relationship with some of the Blue Jays managers or the front office or whomever, and then getting traded for literally MVP Josh Donaldson. It's like, it is one of the strangest Toronto sports careers ever in all aspects. It's hitting all those boxes. I don't think will ever happen again. And he was Canadian. Like, it was just, it's crazy.
The fact that he's Canadian cannot be, it seems like you cannot mention it enough, especially for that era of the Jays.
Yeah. And I remember that also ended up kind of working against him with Blue Jay fandom in near the end of his Blue Jay tenure, for and against, I guess I should say. Because like a lot of the people that were Team Lawrie were like the red Blue Jay Lawrie jersey kind of people. And then it seemed like the anti-Lawrie contingent, a lot of it was like, oh, he's only here because he's Canadian kind of thing.
Right.
And it's part of the story, and it's part of what makes him so fascinating with the Jays.
Yeah, truly a supernova of a moment. He did sort of prep us for the team becoming good, right? He was sort of like the 2015, 2016. He drummed up just enough interest there that some people were easier to get on the bandwagon than before. But to your point about how much he resonated with people, like you'll still see Lawrie jerseys at games. It's not.
Oh yeah.
That there are people that Lawrie is always going to be a special player to them, and
especially the Black Jays Lawrie jersey.
Yeah,
especially.
I think a younger version of me would have held that against people more than the current version of me.
Same. And I think that like it's funny, and like obviously there's like a huge on-field aspect to this, and I don't want to play that down. But it's funny in retrospect kind of how in 2015 or even in 2014 when Lawrie was still there, everyone, if in 2011 you said, who's the one guy you want to see on the Blue Jays roster play in a playoff game? 2011 offseason, everyone would say Brett Lawrie.
100%.
Then 2 years later, that entire narrative was Jose Bautista.
Right.
And like, yes, of course, on-field product, hugely different. And obviously a huge part of it. But just in terms of attitude, Jose kind of took over that as like, this is the coolest guy. I don't know. There's something interesting about that, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but there's something interesting about that.
Yeah, no, the direction the team goes is a reflection of that. Like the team was built in the image of Laurie's style in the early 2010s. That was the era that came after Doc, and then Edwin and Jose really stood out from that, and they shifted that direction, right? Anthopoulos came in and changed that direction, and they built towards that, and it ended up, that ends up being the impetus for the 2012 trade, and that ends up being the impetus, right? Like Lawrie is part of the reason that they trade for Dickey and they trade for all those guys. Like that's
right.
Him being there is part of the reason, because he was drumming up enough interest that you could say, look what happens when we were exciting, and they went for it in part because of him and because of the flashes you would get from Aaron Sebia when he was first coming in, like Romero, Morrow, like that sort of era built you the next step that got you to 2015. So an interesting sort of era in Blue Jays history that I'm happy we got to revisit. I had a really good time. Yeah,
it's like, again, to your point and our point, our generation, this is like not the good old days, but this is the era of like the funny sort of fandom stories, I think, because everyone's fandom stories come from when they're 20.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, that is it for another month of Sportsfeld Storytime. That is the ballad of Brett Lawrie, who you can catch on Instagram golfing now and raising his kid. There was a time there when he was not playing and was not a father, when his Instagram was hilarious. He was just like dunking different size balls into a net at his pool.
Send it.
Eating pre-workout raw. Like, he was a really good time. I remember him doing a Rubik's Cube was a pretty funny one too. But LaCheese, hopefully he's doing well. Brett Lawrie, the Ballad of Brett Lawrie. Let us know what you want to talk about. Us to talk about, that is to say, next month. These are always a blast, and we love going back and revisiting these prime moments of our fanhood. And we, as always, thank you for listening to Sportsfeld Storytime.